Hey, it's Sol with another video, and I would like you to consider this proposal or this fix, kind of. What if the last bosses from a raid were to give a handful of crests that happen to be one level higher than that particular raid? Like, how would you react? Would there be kind of a change in your gearing strategy or your player behavior? Now, I want to sell this idea as, like I said, like a fix based on an inconsistency or a quality of life perk, however you want to spin it. I'm trying my best to not toe step here, though. I don't want this to turn into like a Mythic Plus versus a raid thing. The intention is not to peel players away from something, but with this focus primarily on raiding or raiders, I want to give them a more consistent path to achieving their goals and to help out with a question that the WoW devs constantly face. One of the challenges that we've seen the team take on is how to make instance content like raids repeatable. Like, what's a reason for a given player to head back into that raid for like the 15th or the 20th week if they're not on an alt? And we've seen all sorts of ideas fleshed out, like war forging and titan forging. We've seen vendors, valor vendors. We've seen separate things drop, like pets and mounts and toys that are on separate loot tables, epic crafting recipes that follow us from raid to raid these days, and artifact power and a couple more things. Dragonflight Seasons 2 and 3 gave us an upgrade system that, in my opinion, has offered a really satisfying balance. If an upgrade happens to drop for you that week, hey, great. If an upgrade doesn't drop, well, at least you've got a bunch of crests and flight stones to upgrade what you still have, most likely. Season 3 takes it a step further with upgrading crests once we no longer have a use for them. So, as an example, let's pretend that a player only does the normal raid for the sake of argument, they don't do any keys, maybe they just do some outdoor activities. The raid on normal difficulty drops champion gear and drake crests, and with those drakes, I can upgrade that gear from, to level 4 out of 8. Unfortunately, to go further, I need worm crests or worms, and that doesn't drop from the normal raid. I'd have to run heroic. But that's not the only source of worms. Once all my gear is at item level 463 in every slot, the upgrade rules pretty much say that I no longer need drakes at all, and now I can trade whatever I get in at a rate of 6-1, or to be more precise, I can trade in 90 drakes for 15 worms. It's not a coincidence that the season cap for crests also goes up by 90 each week, meaning that this kind of player who only plays in the normal difficulty raid, they'll be able to slowly upgrade their gear at a rate of 1 upgrade per week because you need 15 crests to apply an upgrade once. Now, that sounds really slow, because it is, but there's also more. One can purchase worm crests from the Great Vault at a rate of 3 per week, but only when opting to take the vault tokens over whatever gear selections there are. For a player who only runs normal, choices will eventually run out, so in the long term that's still pretty good. Like 4 total upgrades in a week means that they can take any one piece of champion gear from 4 all the way to 8 each week. I'm going to jump around a little bit, I'm going backward, but let's take a look at Raid Finder 2. Folks who just play Raid Finder, they need whelplings, and later will need drakes to upgrade their veteran gear. Drakes aren't found off a vendor, but they can be farmed in the outdoor world, so even Raid Finder players have a slow but capable path to capping out their veteran gear. Mythic Raiding is Mythic Raiding, with only 4 upgrade levels that only use aspects which are found from the raid, and there's no going higher, there's no alternate path needed at all. Meanwhile, and here's the focus, a player who does the heroic raid and is in the same situation, they're eventually going to get hero class gear to level like 4 out of 6 using worms. They'll eventually be able to convert 90 worms into 15 aspects to upgrade their hero class gear each week, after the caps. But this time there is no Great Vault vendor there's no outdoor content to help them out. The only source of aspects otherwise include Mythic Keys 16 and higher, and of course the Mythic Raid, which compared to world content, it's not nearly as accessible. There's a painfully obvious solution that exists right now. Like, dude, just go do 16s. They're quite easy. In fact, they're easier, well, quote, easier than doing the raid between time and logistics. And you know what? It's totally fine to think that way. Gamers are going to make decisions. You are going to make decisions. What I'm just trying to suggest here is a fix. It's just a surgical tweak to make repeated raids, not just heroic, but all difficulties actually, feel just a tiny bit better. At the risk of repeating myself, I'm not trying to drag Mythic Plus down or to buff raids in a way to make them more lucrative than keys. I'm just trying to fix a little something. I'm trying to make gear upgrades feel a little bit more consistent across raid difficulties. So let's circle back. What if, again, the last bosses from a raid were to give crests that were one level higher than that raid? We're going to use Heroic as the example because it's the one that needs the fix. Let's pretend that the last three bosses, Smolderon, Tindril, and Farok, each dropped like 5 aspects. And that's on top of the worms that drop now. That's going to send a message to raiders. First, that, hey, that's cool, there's an additional path to aspects. Folks aren't going to be able to just farm early bosses to get to them. You've got to get to those final 3, unless of course you have the skip, which means you've at least done a good bit of raiding. Limiting the aspects to the final bosses, it also feels kind of natural because before a team gets there, generally they're going to be earning hero class pieces and upgrading them with worms at first. Then they'll move on to aspects, and by the time you need those aspects, you'll be farming the final bosses. There's no guarantee though that a given player will be ready to upgrade worms to aspects at the same time they get access to those final bosses, but I'd almost say that it's not a huge issue because when it's all said and done, heroic raiders are going to get access to 2 aspect upgrades up from 1 with this fix. So why only 2? If a player has the capability right now on live servers to apply up to 4 upgrades to champion gear, from trading and the Great Vault, and then max it out, I see no problem with letting a different player max out their hero gear. They only need to apply 2 more upgrades in this case. Now, I know it's very, very easy to get distracted by just the presence of Mythic Plus. I mean, bringing it up, I can't help but point out that timing is 16 or higher awards 12 aspects. So 2 16s versus a full clear of heroic pretty much. Now, someone who's capable of doing both is going to consider the time investment and difficulty, and they're going to make a very fast and very easy decision if they are, aspect goal minded. But that is a different topic altogether. I'm just identifying a hole, a bug almost, on how crests are passed around across difficulties. Folks who run Raid Finder, normal, and mythic raids have an extra path to maxing out the gear earned within their difficulty. Hero class gear doesn't have that second path. They're just kind of stuck on that 1 upgrade per week, and all I'm suggesting they can is the equivalent of 1 additional upgrade after the raid's on farm. I'm also suggesting that pretty much this be added to Raid Finder and normal difficulties too, because I don't see 1 additional upgrade as being enough to cause a punitive or a negative impact, and it helps give more reasons to repeat raid content if one so chooses. So again, 1 more upgrade's worth of crests at the end of the raid, and it's still going to be subject to like the season cap and everything. I would like to think that this is, if nothing else, a good point to start discussions that will help raiders while being mindful that we're not trying to affect player behavior, we're just trying to reinforce current behaviors. And that's it. Like the video, subscribe, tell me what you think, and if you got some better ideas, I'm sure you do, I want to read them, and of course, talk more WoW. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.